Hi, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on Zero Waste Day. We see that people are joining. We're going to wait and have more people tune in before we officially get started. For those who are joining in, you're welcome to use the chat function to mention your name, your organization, and probably the location where you are joining from. And we're really looking forward to an exciting event in celebrating the second UN Day of Zero Waste. And really thanks for joining and looking forward to an amazing event. So for those who are here, you can let us know your name, which organization you're joining from, and the city or the country where you're joining us from today. To also appreciate the diversity of pool of people who might be with us today. And you can do that on the chat function. Yeah. So I'm going to start, but I'm not going to use the chat function because I'm a moderator and I have the special privilege of having to say it out loud. So my name is Joshua Amponsem, and I'm joining today from Accra, and I'm with the Youth Climate Justice Fund, but I've also been part of the Green Africa Youth Organization, which is a youth-led organization that works to support zero waste projects with municipalities. And I see now that in the chat, we have Institute of Police, which is an organization I know and I really admire a lot. We have Zero Waste in Auckland, Race to Zero Waste in Auckland. We have Justice in Chicago. We have groups in California joining as well. We have a group in DC. So quite a wide range of different people joining us today. We got groups in Brooklyn, New York, Post Landfill Action Network, thanks for coming. And we have Daniel from Jacksonville, Florida, also joining us. We have groups in San Francisco, Pacific Environment. So yeah, really thanks for joining. We see that we have quite a number of people already here. This is exciting. So thanks for joining us and please keep it coming, letting us know your city, your organization, and if you find any organization in this chat function where you've been wanting to reach out to them, please DM them right away. It always happens that you join a webinar, there's a group that you've been looking to get in touch with, and then you find them on a webinar, you're like, oh, they are here. So if you find a group like that who is here, just drop them a message. We are one big zero waste family, so nice to keep the connections going. And I also see that we have the Elite SDGs Business Consulting in Peru and Chile also here. And we have folks from Bogota as well. So quite a wide range of different audiences with us today. Very exciting. So thanks everyone for joining us. It's the second official UN Zero Waste Day celebration, and we're having this virtual event to really celebrate that. It's 4 minutes past. I'm just going to give it another minute to have a few more people joining, and then we will officially start the event. Please also noting that the event would also have this simultaneous sort of translation possible for this webinar. So this will also come up soon for you to be aware of that, so that you can, for those who are Spanish speakers, you'll be able to also have this in your language. Great. So once again, welcome to this amazing webinar that we are having today, focusing on zero waste, from momentum to action. And indeed, this year is the year of zero waste. For those of you who have been involved in the global conversation, for those who are at COP, for those who have been involved in the sort of policy dialogues and philanthropy dialogue, you would know that it's been a lot of hard work over the past few years. And we've gotten to that point where the momentum is right, but not just the momentum, we are also having partners, including yourselves, who are in communities on the ground, driving those momentum to push action that really demonstrates that zero waste is the future, and there's no other future for both climate and environment without zero waste. So this is really a very big moment for us to celebrate. and also acknowledging the leadership of the United Nations in really adopting a day that brings us together as a community to discuss zero waste, see where we are, but also be able to make progress on expediting action on zero waste. So once again, my name is Joshua Amponsem, and I'll be the moderator for today. The session will last for about an hour, and we will have different ways of engaging. All attendees really recommending you to be on mute, because that helps us get audio for those who are speaking across. That's super important. If you have any technical issues, please let us know in the chat box. Within the 1 hour of the event, we have the 20 minutes, last 20 minutes for Q&A, and we will straightly use the Q&A box for doing this. So if you have any question or anything you want to ask, please, let's try to use the Q&A function in Zoom to do that. This webinar is recorded. So what that means is that, we hope that all of you are okay with that, with this being recorded, so that we can also circulate it afterwards for those who might not be able to join us and still want to know what happened in this Zoom. Below, there is a sort of a Spanish translation there to help those who speak Spanish to be able to follow the conversation. Please have a read on that and follow the instructions to be able to get the simultaneous translation. And welcoming the new folks who just joined, including Anna from Nipe Green Education US, and a few others who I cannot mention all the names here, but really thanks for joining and happy to have you here. So this is great. Seems like we have the other people who are supposed to be here. There's always a saying that those who are here are the ones who are meant to be here. So we're going to start with a little poll to understand and appreciate the diversity of this movement. And this is, recognizing that the strength of this movement lies within our diversity, and we want to appreciate the different expertise that come together to form the zero waste community. And we know that it's a community of different people, including community organizers, informal waste workers, including those who work from the economics and the finance perspective, those who are focusing on the advocacy and pushing for public policy around this, but also incredibly those who are working on research to inform the next phase of this work, and those who are working on implementation. And then you have others who are just part of everything and do every bit of this work to push this agenda. And those who are not part of all of this, but are here today because they want to get involved. So let us see the diversity of what we have here. Please make a vote, and you can quickly sort of click on the option that you want and submit. And I'm very, very curious to see what is the ratio of audience we have here. If because it's a UN day, we've got only the policy people, or if because of it being by virtual and international day, we got a lot of implementers also in the room. So please do us the honor of letting us know which primary intervention that you bring to this community and the work that you do. And in few seconds, we're going to close this and share that so that we see everyone who is here in terms of where we are coming from and how we show up in this work. All right, I like to think that everyone has voted because it's a very simple vote. It's not like the presidential polls where you really have to think a lot about, am I making the right choice or not? This is pretty straightforward, so I hope that everyone did it. And then here we are. Amazing. All right. It's exciting. So we got majority of the people in this room are doing everything. They're doing all of it together. That's like 26% of all of us here. That's really great. And we have the next highest rank being implementers, which is really, really amazing. It's not always often that you find in a webinar people who are actually on the ground doing the work being able to join. So really thanks for sharing that with us. And I think it's a big, also congratulations to GAIA and the GAIA network and the whole community for showing up like this and having this diversity in this room. So we, as a community, choosing this theme, the year of zero waste from momentum to action, is something that we really want to sort of acknowledge the work that we've all been doing, but also show that this is the future. We will be having a lively conversation with our panelists, with all of you, on what it will take to scale, to escalate, to really push forward zero waste, on based on current trend, but also the obstacles and the proven strategies that we all know work, but also still there are some obstacles we need to overcome. And before we get into that and sort of introduce our panelists and get the conversation started, there is something exciting. What is the current state of play when it comes to zero waste globally? What does it look like around the world? And GAIA has put together an amazing video unveiling this for the first time publicly. And we want to share that with you now so that you get to see before it even gets into the public domain. So we are all very lucky to be one of the first viewers of this work. So let's pay attention, watch this briefly, and then we will continue from there.
Oops.
Is the video good to go? Perfect.
We do not inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children. Imagine handing them a world without waste. In our journey towards a sustainable future, focusing solely on individual action might feel like trying to empty the ocean with a teaspoon. To make a real difference, we must tackle the roots of the problem in a big and grand way. To be exact, the systems that shape the way we produce, consume, relate with nature, and with each other as a society. Let's be honest, our current systems are designed for disposability, not sustainability. They prioritize short-term convenience and profit over the long-term health of our planet. Take food waste as an example. Current statistics show that we produce 1.3 billion tons of food waste annually around the world. This amounts to about 8 to 10% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. To put this into perspective, this will be 8 times of Mount Everest made entirely out of uneaten food. That is a lot of food waste and a huge climate threat. One thing is for sure, we need new systems. It is time to invest in zero waste and stop burning money on polluting industries like waste incineration, gasification, pyrolysis, and chemical recycling. Effective systemic change involves redesigning our economies to function within nature's limits and people's well-being. In many parts around the world, this means reducing resource consumption. And for all goods that we really need, creating systems where every product can be repurposed, recycled, or composted so that nothing is wasted. These zero-waste models will bring us closer to a waste-free, sustainable, and a just future for all. This sounds like a beautiful vision, I know, but you might be asking yourself, how should we start to change these rigid old systems? This transition goes beyond individual behavior change. It requires our governments and businesses to redesign our economy to be zero waste. We need policy changes that effectively drive zero waste and enables local ecosystems to safely recycle, reuse, and compost all discards. Policies that put people at the center of this transition to align with environmental and social justice. This sounds like an ambitious plan, but is there any evidence that these strategies are already working? Yes.
In the Ashanti region, specifically Edubiasi, GAIA is able to collect 90% of organic waste from the households. Organic waste is very important to us because they serve as the major contributor of greenhouse gases when they are sent to landfills, which is the normal practice done by assembly officials.
The best part, solutions like these not only reduce waste, they revitalize local economies. Zero waste systems create 200 times more jobs than our old disposal system. And it doesn't stop there. These practices create better jobs that go beyond basic labor, provide higher wages, and offer permanent positions and improve quality of life. Are you still unsure if these strategies can be implemented on a larger scale? Let's take a look at success stories of zero waste on a municipality level. Trivandrum in India was able to bring down their waste to 150 tons per day through the implementation of green protocols, public campaigns, and a ban on single-use plastics. Or Santa Juana in Chile.
La motivación del municipio fue disminuir el traslado de residuos a relleno sanitario. También una motivación fue enseñar a la gente educación ambiental para que pudieran separar sus residuos en sus casas y el municipio poder trasladarlo a la planta y tratarlos. Y también fue el disminuir los gases de efecto invernadero que estaban provocando también y están provocando el calentamiento global y el cambio climático.
Those cities are showing us that systems change is not only effective, but achievable. The solutions are there. Now it's up to us to advocate for them and apply them globally. For our planet, for our children, for a future where waste does not exist. Because we don't just inherit the earth from our ancestors, we are borrowing it from our children. And we need to return it in a better shape than we found it.
Awesome, and I really hope that we all enjoyed watching this video and we agree with this very powerful statement of being able to leave the planet and hand it over to the next generation, future generations, in a better way than we found it. Some of the components of this video that I really appreciate is the concept of being able to practice zero waste at a very micro level, but also being able to scale it at a very sort of macro level. And I think that is why we are here today. The UN has acknowledged the International Day of Zero Waste really as a way of spotlighting and shining an example of how zero waste has captured the attention of communities, policymakers, sustainable finance institutions, and different experts, particularly within the climate space around the world. And specifically, as I said, at COP28, you must have read or heard somewhere that there was a pledge of 10 billion USD to tackle waste emissions, focusing on methane. And there are over 400 zero waste cities in Europe alone, and mega cities in Asia and Africa have advanced zero waste strategies that have cut waste by up to 80%. This is a significant number. All of that would not have been possible without the work that we all do, yet we still face challenges that we need to be able to address. There is a clear momentum around zero waste, which is growing, but the question is, will it keep pace with the urgency of the problem we face, of the climate crisis? And how do leaders turn this momentum into action and rapidly scale zero waste system at the pace that is required to meet the urgency and the scale of the problem that we see today? So I'm very, very, very humbled to be joined by this incredible panel coming from different facets of different zero waste working programs, to be able to share with us their work, what they do, and how we can really accelerate and scale zero waste systems at a pace that is required. I'm going to quickly introduce our panelists, and then I'm going to go into specific questions that each of them will be able to address with us, a very dialogue that will help us dig into some of these issues. I will start with Zeynep, who is an advisor in the Human Rights and Humanitarian team in the Office of the President of the 77th Session of the General Assembly. Before joining this team within the Office of the President of the General Assembly, she was a member of the Turkish mission to the UN as a career diplomat, and Zeynep completed her PhD in Hispanic Studies at Ankara University. And for the record, last year, when the first Zero Waste, International Zero Waste Day was celebrated, the government of Turkey and the mission in New York played a significant role of hosting an event where we were all part of, and this was really brilliant. So thanks, Zeynep, for being with us and for joining this webinar. The next panelist we have is Josh Chamberlain, the visionary founder of Go Green Ocean City in Maryland, a nonprofit dedicated to making Ocean City the first zero waste resort town in the United States. And it starts with their new citywide compost program anticipated to divert 1 million pounds of organic waste compost this September. So Josh, really thanks for joining us to share this vision with us and how you're doing your work. And then we have Nicholas Diaz, who is the program manager of the Waste and Circular Economy program at the Global Methane Hub. And at this point, a lot of you would know Global Methane Hub because it's really one of the establishments that really cemented our work as a zero waste community within the climate space and has over 10 years experience in climate change and sustainable development through consulting, research, and coordinations of initiatives in both public and the private sector. And then we have Clara Makenya, who is the country coordinator and representative of UNEP in Tanzania and Namibia, leading efforts to tackle the interconnectedness of climate change, pollution, biodiversity loss in these countries. And we will hear from her about that, knowing very well that typically it's very complex when you have different UN processes tackling different issues. And it could be very difficult trying to bring all of this together because we live in a world of interconnectedness and intersectionality. And then lastly, I have here Dr. Neil Tangri, who is a senior fellow at the Goldman School of Public Policy, and also work with international governance of environmental issues, particularly focusing on climate change and plastics, with over 20 years of experience working on issues of waste, plastic, climate change, toxics, and environmental justice. And I've had a chance to interact with Neil through my work at GAIA when we started our zero waste project in Ghana, and also within the UN climate change space, because he also served as the Science and Policy Director at the Global Alliance for Incinerator Alternatives. So really great to have all of you here with us today. And I'm very happy to kickstart this conversation, to have all of you pop up on our screen for us to start this engagement. And I'm going to start with you, Clara. Coming from this sort of UN policy space and working on this interconnectedness, the UN resolution declaring March 30th as the International Zero Waste Day clearly marks the urgency of putting waste high on the environmental and political agenda. Can you share with us why it is important to transition to zero waste and how the UN with governments in this regard?
Thank you very much, Joshua. Let me start by wishing everyone in this platform a very happy International Day of Zero Waste ahead of time, and thanking you organizers for this very timely forum. So why is transitioning to zero waste important, and what is it that the UN is doing? Let me tackle it from the angle of impacts of inadequate waste management practices, or rather improper waste management practices. Improper waste management practices have serious health and environmental consequences, which can consequently actually also undermine the efforts to achieve sustainable development goals. Now, transitioning to zero waste helps mitigate these environmental impacts of waste disposal, including reducing the greenhouse gas emission from landfill, as we are aware that there's a lot of methane and carbon that comes from the landfills, but also minimizing pollution from land, water, and air. And you're probably aware that I think it's about 20% that is coming from, the methane that is generated from the organic waste globally, while the open burning contributes to almost 11% of black carbon. And now both carbon and methane are very short-lived climate pollutants that contribute to climate change. Now, by adopting zero waste practices, communities can conserve natural resources, can reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but also reduce energy consumption and promote more sustainable circular economy models. Now, transitioning to zero waste, I would say, would also sort of create economic opportunities, job creation, just as the video showed us, in the cause of recycling, waste management sectors, and of course, stimulate innovation in waste to energy technologies, as well as resource recovery. Now, what the UN is doing in this, the UN is playing a very critical role in terms of, the platforms, the initiatives, the partnerships within the framework of multilateral environmental agreements And of course, the regional and global platforms and commitments that the UN is supporting. So there are a number of multilateral environmental agreements, such as, the Basel Convention of the control of, transboundary movement of hazardous waste and their disposal. There is the Stockholm Convention on persistent organic pollutants, and there is Rotterdam Convention. And this is on the prior and informed concept of hazardous chemicals and pesticides in international trade. So all these agreements together provide a framework for better international cooperation and guidelines for waste reduction, recycling, but also environmentally sound disposal of waste. Through the regional platforms, the UN brings together government, intergovernmental organizations, civil society, and other stakeholders to exchange knowledge, experiences, best practices in waste management as a whole. Now, all these platforms together foster collaboration, capacity building, and technical assistance to enhance waste management systems and promote the transition to zero waste. But also, the UN encourages governments to make commitments, especially with initiatives that are aimed at achieving zero waste goals. For example, we have the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, and in particular, goal number 12, about responsible consumption and production, which includes targets related to waste reduction, recycling, and environmentally sound management, of waste. We are also providing scientific assessment, policy advice on resource use and waste management as a whole. And this is an example from the role played by the UNEP International Resource Panel. Lastly, but not least, moderator, there is technical assistance and capacity building. The UN provides technical assistance and capacity building, supporting the government to strengthen the waste management systems and enhance institutional capacity to develop policies, regulations, standards, infrastructure, and promote sustainable practice. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Clara, for sharing that with us. And I think that we will all agree that in our work, most often to be able to scale our work and to get it to the growth that we want to have it, it really requires policies at the local level to really move that. And most of those policies, the advocacy around that is always backing it up with international frameworks and conventions that countries have signed on to and using it as a leverage to really propel that. And I think there's a lot to be said about the job creation and economic opportunities that are provided through these projects. And also lastly, re-echoing the value of having the regional platform for knowledge exchange between countries, particularly between different regions, on what are the best practices, how to really accelerate action with the limited resources that are available to us. So thanks a lot, Clara, for sharing this with us. And I'll quickly move to Zeynep, and really following the same angle of interconnectedness, but looking at this now from a multiple crisis perspective. It is very, very, very known now that we are living in an era of polycrisis. We're talking about climate crisis, the loss of biodiversity, pollution at scale, poverty, and the old sort of existing social injustices that is with us in all facets of life, which is really something that needs to be dealt with. Is there an opportunity from your experience and sort of from your human rights background? Is there an opportunity here in transitioning to zero waste to help address these human rights issues?
Thank you, Joshua. And I want to thank, by the way, all colleagues who make this event possible. It's my pleasure to be here with all of you. So yes, actually, the zero waste framework, as highlighted by the relevant UN General Assembly resolution, represents a crucial step towards addressing interconnected global crises, including climate change, food security, and other issues, as you've just mentioned. So Turkey's initiative is one of the member states of the UN, starting with the launch of a national zero waste project back in 2017 and culminating in the adoption of the resolution by the UN General Assembly in 2022, underscores the importance of international cooperation and commitment in tackling environmental challenges. We can certainly state that promoting zero waste is not just an environmental issue, it is also a social and economic issue. Transitioning to a circular economy could generate $4.5 trillion in economic benefits by 2030. Furthermore, investing in waste management could create up to 15 billion jobs globally by 2030, all while reducing greenhouse gas emission by 39%. Now, in parallel, another vital UN moment within this framework that I want to mention today is was actually back in 2022, when the first time in its history, the UN recognized that everyone, everywhere, has the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. That General Assembly resolution adopted in New York, together with the Human Rights Council resolution adopted in Geneva, add this human right to the library of internationally recognized rights. These resolutions not only underline the interconnectedness of environmental protection and human rights, but they also highlight the urgent need to address environmental challenges to safeguard human health and well-being. Amidst the triumphs and tribulations of our collective journey, one truth remains self-evident. The transition to zero waste is not merely a destination, but a continuum, a perpetual quest for safeguarding our planet. In that framework, zero waste initiatives contribute to environmental sustainability, which is closely linked to the realization of several human rights, including the right to a clean, healthy environment, the right to health, and the right to life itself. By reducing pollution, minimizing environmental degradation, and mitigation climate change, zero waste practices help safeguard these fundamental human rights, particularly for vulnerable communities disproportionately affected by environmental hazards. Transitioning into zero waste can also promote social justice and economic rights by creating opportunities for sustainable livelihoods and inclusive economic growth. Zero waste initiatives often prioritize local and community-based solutions, empowering marginalized groups to participate in the formal economy and access decent work conditions. Moreover, zero waste strategies contribute to poverty alleviation and food security by promoting resource efficiency, circular economies, and sustainable consumption and production patterns. By minimizing waste generation and promoting reuse, recycle, and composting, communities can reduce the strain on natural resources and ensure equitable access to essential goods and services, including food, water, and sanitation. This directly supports the fulfillment of economic, social, and cultural rights, such as the right to food, the right to water, and the right to adequate housing. So in essence, transitioning into zero waste definitely aligns with the United Nations Human Rights Framework by addressing the interconnected challenges of climate change, food security, loss of biodiversity, and social injustices. By promoting sustainable development and fostering resilient communities, zero waste initiatives contribute to the realization of a broad range of human rights, advancing the vision of a more equitable, inclusive, and sustainable world for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zeynep. And I remember when I was at the UN and this resolution was passed, talking about sort of everyone everyone have the right to a clean, healthy environment. And I remember the number of emails we got from different youth groups around the world, particularly those who are working within the waste field, asking, how do you uphold this resolution? Because when I look out of my window, I am not benefiting from this right. It's been taken away from me, and I'm not living that reality, right? And I think that is a huge issue that we have. There's one part of it where we can all commonly agree and come under one framework, and then the implementation part of it and the resources required to do that becomes a challenge. And that is a very good way for me to go to Nicholas with the Global Methane Hub. You and other institutions are really working on getting the funding that is needed to do some of this work, right? Particularly on methane reduction in your case within the waste sector. And that automatically means everything that Zeynep said, supporting the informal economy to become formal, getting access to standard and basic human rights services that people are able to do. But as it stands now, there is still a bigger question when it comes to funding and philanthropy. Who is getting the money? Where is the money going to? And why is it even important to fund zero waste initiative that reduce organic waste disposal in the first place? So it would be really good for you to walk us through that process from GMH's perspective to see the work that you are doing and how you were able to address this.
Okay, thank you, Joshua, and thank you for inviting. It's a pleasure to be here, present at this important day. And yeah, I think the zero waste models are a guide for the work that we are doing. For those who don't know us, the Global Methane Hub is one of the main philanthropic efforts tackling down methane emissions from anthropogenic sources. These come mostly from the energy, agricultural, and waste sectors. And in the case of waste, there's a huge opportunity, as the presenters here have talked about, of the pressure that's coming from the climate crisis that we have globally in terms of pollution and climate, and also the detriment that poses in impoverished and historically impacted communities, with the urgency of acting on methane specifically. And to put it in a way, methane is like flaring something that's already burning. It's a greenhouse gas that 80 times more powerful in the short term than carbon dioxide. So obviously it puts some pressure, an additional pressure to the climate crisis. And that's why it's so relevant to check where the funds are going. And the current landscape is obviously we need to stop methane emissions coming from the existing landfill and dump sites, because that's what's contributing right now to the problem. And regarding that, obviously, we need to align funding requirements and the targets that are being put for international financial institutions in line with the climate crisis, and also all these needs that are directly related to development needs. But at the same time, we need to transform the system that's contributing to the crisis. We cannot, and I think this is pretty direct, that the linear production model doesn't longer resist, that there's a lot of pressure on it. And obviously, zero waste models transform that understanding, putting the prevention over what's disposal, and also trying to foster what's the action that can be done regarding food redistribution, for example, and the recovery of the organics through composting on anaerobic digestion over what's currently the status quo. So obviously we're behind that transformation at the same time that we are trying to stop the flaring of the crisis. And yeah, trying to connect all the dots, the finance, the data, and all the policy and regulations behind that. Thank you, Yosha.
Thank you very much, Nicholas. And, you know, as we are talking, I just think of a continent like Africa, where we still have more than 60% of waste being organic. So by default, you can't literally do so much about waste management and about zero waste without tackling organics. At the same time, those who can actually help take organics and work with it are those in the informal economy. And if you're not able to get resources to them and money to them, you are almost going to fail with every intervention that you plan. So really great hearing from you on that work and how you were able to do this, but also from the research perspective on how are the different methods that could be adopted to make sure that we are able to really support the reduction of organic waste. And I'm going to turn to Neil quickly, particularly also on the research part, because most of the work that has happened with the zero waste community, and I very much remember COP26 or COP27 when the zero waste to zero emissions report came up, and a bunch of us used that as a way to enter into rooms and to start conversations using that data. And I know that you've recently done another research really looking at the climate mitigation potential of implementing zero waste systems at the municipal level. What were the key findings of this research in terms of the climate contribution to climate, but also the additional benefit to zero waste systems, and also specifically looking at the environmental justice component of that and plastics as well, given that Nicholas already talked about organics?
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, Joshua, and thank you everyone for being here. I have to say, personally, it makes me very happy to hear that a report that I was involved in actually gets used, because we all know that sometimes we write reports and they sit on a shelf. And so we've been doing a number of studies over the last few years on the intersection of climate and waste. And it's I think been an underappreciated intersection until recent years, really, with the recent focus on methane. But it goes broader than methane. So So to kind of cut to the highlights, the Zero Waste to Zero Emissions report that Joshua was referencing, that we brought out last year, was a modeling study of 8 very diverse cities from around the world, from Detroit in the US to Bandung in Indonesia to Sao Paulo and Dar es Salaam and Seoul and Temuco in Chile, Lviv in Ukraine. So like very different cities, very different municipal structures, different sizes. And we asked the simple question, well, what if these cities did manage their waste according to the best practices that we have seen already successfully implemented in similar cities around the world, places like Trivandrum and San Francisco and other places. And the results, I will say that the results really surprised me. We saw an 84% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions from the waste sector that's not the theoretical maximum, right? That's at the very practical, like these are our goals that we've already seen met and exceeded. Seoul, for example, already collects 96% of its organics separately. And that's those organics that are not going to landfill and not creating methane. And so obviously the methane emissions was a really big part of this. We did another study, Methane Matters, the previous year, and found that a comprehensive approach to handling organics, starting with source separation, and then pre-treatment and then biocover on landfills, can reduce landfill methane by 95%. Right. So we really do have the solutions. And I would also add that this is not even touching the most impactful actions, which are the upstream actions, right? Reducing food waste and loss, ensuring that that food is actually consumed, ideally by humans, if not by animals, but addressing all of the kind of upstream actions before something actually becomes waste is really the most important point of intervention. And that helps to address some of the issues that the other speakers were talking about, such as hunger and access to food. And it also has implications for things like deforestation, because we continue to see deforestation driven by a hunger for land to produce food and agricultural products. So we can have huge impacts on methane emissions, even just looking at the back end. We can have a big impact on overall greenhouse gas emissions. But there are some things that we really do need to tackle upstream, and plastics is one of those. Until a few years ago, plastics were a very small part of the waste stream, but they're one that we need to really reduce the production of, because that's where the vast majority of greenhouse gas emissions are associated. And I'll briefly touch on the environmental justice aspect. We all know that waste facilities tend to be located in the poorest and most unprivileged zones of any city. And so zero waste approaches that reduce the waste going to waste facilities and improve those conditions are going to have huge impacts for those host communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Neil, and completely agreeing, because we see it how typically in the absence of zero waste, how corporate and large companies really focus on rich neighborhoods and fancy neighborhoods to do their work. And even in some contexts, deliberately pushing waste to the doorsteps of those who are living in slum areas and poor income neighborhoods. And this is really sort of that justice element that we need to focus on. So really thanks for sharing that with us. And I'm going to go briefly to Josh. And Josh, you are an icon. I mean, you have set up something that is growing and will soon be the first sort of zero waste resort in the United States. And this is really impressive and massive, and congratulations for doing that work. What we want to learn from you today, what was the key element for your success, and how did you manage to scale up your organic waste collection, knowing that it's pretty difficult doing this work from everybody who is involved in organic waste collection and sort of waste management collection, particularly in areas where there is not so much of city planning and better planning. It could be extremely difficult. So what have been the key elements of your success and how did you scale this work?
Thanks, man. And great video, by the way. I think I'm going to steal your line, disposability, not sustainability. That was really well done. So yeah, Ocean City, Maryland. I see a lot of people in Maryland in the chat. DC, hello to all of you. I think one key word here is behavioral shift, right? We're trying to change something that has been going on the same since 2009, burning recyclables, burning compostables, and just trying to change everybody from doing that. So I think the first key element is our strong grassroots social media campaign. Me being a filmmaker, working in marketing, I know how to use social media to really gain a grassroots presence. So we've been doing that for 7 years, and we have well over 5,000 people following us. And that's my outreach to everybody in the community. I can send out a post on Instagram and I can get 150 views within seconds. I can have them sign a petition. I can have them come to an event. So that's a really big key element for us. Also, positive social media posts. We are so desensitized with negative climate change and the world is falling apart, and we do not get the reactions we get by posting negatively. So we try to post stuff positive and show our progress. And 3 words is progress, not perfection, right? We want to show like we're not trying to build the biggest wall on the first day. We're trying to take little baby increment steps. We call it crawl, walk, run, and then just slowly turn the tides around. And it's definitely working for us. The biggest key element of our program and the most success is obviously our compost program. We introduced it 7 years ago with 1 restaurant. We did 2,000 pounds in 1 year. Last year we did 350,000 pounds, and this year we'll reach 1 million pounds since the life of our program. So we're seeing ridiculous progress and momentum on that scale. We also partner with World Centric, a compostable company. So our goal is to begin phasing out plastics and getting rid of all of that extra waste and bringing it to the compost farm. So that's definitely a key element that we have. Strong community volunteers is definitely number 1 on our list. We have, retired people, students, classes, everything. Data is a great weapon for us. We can show the city that we removed 5 tractor trailers from the waste stream last year, and at the height of our program, we can remove 35 tractor trailers. So data is an extreme thing. And then also doing our work and stuff, municipalities and things like that are beginning to see what we're doing, and they're also wanting to come on board as well. So we're becoming a role model city for our surrounding cities and people. So it's a really great thing to see, and really ecstatic about our progress.
Now, Josh, this is fantastic. It's really great. Thanks for sharing this with us. Thanks for everything you do. Thanks to all our panelists and the amazing work that you are doing. I already see there's a question in the chat, in the Q&A function, encouraging everyone to add your questions there. What I'm going to do is to take a few sort of a minute or so to do a general poll from all our audience after hearing all these conversations, to understand from you what you think is the greatest hurdle that we need to overcome in order to scale zero waste globally. And that poll is going to pop up very soon. And while we wait for that to happen, really encouraging everyone, use the Q&A function to type in your questions. I'm going to go to our panelists and address these questions to them. In the interest of time, panelists, if you can also type in your responses to some of the questions you see in the Q&A function or in the chat, please do so. That will make it also very quick for us. And now I see the poll is up. So what do you think is the greatest hurdle that we need to overcome in order to scale zero waste globally? And I'm just going to leave it a few seconds for folks to pick a response to that. And then I will come to the panelists with a couple of questions that I think are really, really important that requires a verbal response as well. Great. So voting is done. The results are in. We see that majority of the responses are really looking at 2 things: the political will. So, and this is very important. And everyone got to make a decision on who they want to vote for, as the world is now in election phases. Please vote wisely and vote for people who really have the will for us to drive this work. Super important. And then the next thing I see here is ending harmful industrial practices. And I think this is super important, and it really goes along with the political will, because in many cases, industry and policymakers are like this, and being able to really confront them and really work with them to find better solutions for it is super important. And then I see two things here, which are all on equal levels. Education for the public, super important, and the finance that is needed, which is also the way that Global Methane Hub is doing, and also GAIA also does it with its network. So this is all super important, and thanks for sharing that with us. I'm going to quickly direct some of the questions that we are having, and I'm going to ask this first one probably to Josh, because you work on organics, but also to Nicholas for the work that you do on organics as well. So there is a question here from Jacqueline looking at the treatment of organic waste is known as an important action to improve waste management. So why is the poor adopted in most of the cities around the world? What do you think are the main bottlenecks for implementing organic waste sustainable management? So in most cases, poor organic waste is literally linked to poverty and informal settlements in many parts of the world. And that is environmental justice and social justice issues we're talking about. So why is that the case? And what are the bottlenecks in implementing this work? So open to all the panelists, but also particularly Nicholas and Josh, if you want to take a bite of this.
Yeah, thank you, Jacqueline, for the question. A big question, critical one. And yeah, I think it has to do with awareness of what the solutions look like, how feasible they are, how easily they can be implemented in a certain location. And there are many stakeholders that are associated with making a specific project or solution possible. So you need to have them all aligned on a shared approach and connected with that information. So that's a big gap. It's something that we are trying to address through different platforms and initiatives, trying to create the momentum and the knowledge that's required to advance where is more possible, and then build from there and create these case studies, this case of successes that we can show increasingly with time that's possible, that cost a certain amount, and that the business model can be run, and this can be sustainable over time, like from triple bottom line approach. So yeah, we need to advance towards that end, and for that is critical to have like events and collaboration like this one, like to really be possible to create this awareness and common knowledge that's going to allow us to advance toward that end.
Great, no, thanks. And I saw that there were a couple of questions for Josh as well. I think one of them having to do the how to reach you, and you've given your contact over there, and also something around what is the program you're running for? Is it for residents, visitors, restaurants? Is it for everybody in the city? I think you can give a quick response to that.
Yeah, so it is for all the restaurants, but visitors and residents are allowed to drop off in our cans after they contact us. So we do have visitors that come out of town and come into town and say, hey, I do this at home. Can I do this here? And we say yes. So absolutely, everyone.
Sounds good. Sounds good. And then there's a question that is really powerful here, which I wanted to quickly for us to look at. And that is an issue that we are all facing in probably the developing world or in the global south at large. And that is, how do you think we can influence international organizations such as the UNDPs and other organizations of such sort in investing in zero waste as opposed to incinerator projects? And I can think of many examples where development organizations that are big tend to invest in incinerator program instead of zero waste. So quick response, I guess, Clara, you can talk about this briefly.
Yeah, very quickly, I would say really advocacy still works and continues to work. And of course, most of the times also policy drives everything. So if the joint initiatives are there, if you have the, sort of advocacy campaigns for that particular country and engaging with the government so that the right policies come on board. So, these initiatives will be driven and will be really influenced by the policies that are on the ground. So I would say really influencing the policy, continuing with the advocacy and joint initiatives that will, speak for what is right and what is not appropriate. Thank you.
Great. And then there's another question which I find very important, and that is typically sometimes when you start your zero waste project, you engage in a dialogue. The first few things you hear is that this is too small to be invested in. This is not going to be gonna scale, right? And we've shown in the video that it's scalable and it can go from micro to very much municipality and at large. So what would you be the tips and encouragement that you would give to people who are now setting up their models? When they hear these things, what do they say? And what would be the right reaction to that? And anyone is welcome to attempt to this. Clara, you can go ahead if you.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether I captured it very well, but I believe, yes, indeed, there are small initiatives and they can be scaled up. And I don't think there is anything less important. So yes, it could be small, but it could just as equally important. So the thing is that we want to look at, and see those catalytic sort of action. And those are the ones that will have some sort of really, more traction to partners and stakeholders in supporting them. Yeah.
Great. Neil, do you want to contribute to that?
Yeah, I was just going to add, I think we do have large scale successes, and it's worth pointing to these, and we have them in different parts of the world. Seoul, I mentioned, has a 96% separate collection rate for its organics. Tiruvananthapuram that you had in the video has a successful citywide organics treatment program for a city of 1 million people. We have cities in every region, in every part of the world, wealthy cities, less wealthy cities. There's large scale successes to point to. There may not be one city that has exactly the perfect model that's going to be scaled to everywhere else, but I think we have shown that it works at scale.
Thanks a lot. And quickly saying that some of these case studies, success stories are referenced in the reports that Neil have been leading with GAIA. If you go to the GAIA website, you will find a bunch of those. We could also, when the video goes live, it'll also come with some links that would allow you to see some of these case studies that are referenced in the video. When we started our zero waste journey in Ghana, we faced the same challenge. It's almost at the beginning seen as some little thing you are doing somewhere, and it's never going to be a municipal solution. And now it is a municipality solution, and even going beyond municipality to metropolis, which is even bigger. And slowly it's really gaining that momentum, which is why we are here today, and really having to think about how do we keep that momentum and scale that to even bigger actions. So thanks everyone for the questions. The rest will be answered live in the Q&A function. We have just a minute to go to the hour, and I want to really thank everyone for joining and for the questions that were asked, for the brilliant responses that were given, to our panelists for doing this. And I have one little thing that I'll let the panelists do before they leave, because I think this is very important. And then also sharing this announcement that we are inviting all of you to the International Zero Waste Conference to be held in Dar es Salaam from July 2nd to 4th. If you can make it, this will be really fantastic. It's going to be an amazing program there. The conference is co-hosted by GAIA and its local member, Nipe Fiagio. It will bring together government, policymakers, practitioners, implementers like yourself, financial institutions, and philanthropic entities to really think about best practices. How do we scale and how do we really advance this work? So that is very important, and inviting all of you to join that. Before we move ahead, you can also sign up to watch the video that we just showed today. For those who missed it, it's a brilliant video that talks about zero waste and its solutions and how it is scaling. So the link of that will be in the chat for some of you who want to sign up to watch it when it airs on March 30th, which is official International Zero Waste Day. Please do that so that you can see that. And then lastly, please visit the GAIA website on zero waste for more information on how to get involved, how to start your own project. If you're looking for partners and allies to learn from and to share your experiences with, it is a beautiful, brilliant community, as you would have seen today, very diverse, very rich in experience. We can all get together and really expand this work. All the links are in the chat, so please copy it, go to it, and have access to it, and do get in touch if you need any support from our teams. Before we log off, I want to go to the panelists with one final thing, which is what gives you hope that zero waste is indeed the future? What gives you hope that makes you see that we can really scale and expand this globally? So 30 seconds each. What is that indicator? That one thing that you see that is improving and it gives you hope. Okay, I'll start with you, Claire, because you're already unmuted.
Oh, thank you very much. I believe, the increased awareness, just as Josh has pointed out, driven by media coverage, the grassroots activism, if I can put it that way. All these speeds up the momentum towards, zero waste. So there is hope to that, but also governments are coming up with good policies, guiding on recycling processes, waste treatment technologies, etc. But also businesses are increasingly aware of the benefits of waste management and action towards zero waste. So efficiency that comes with the zero waste has been recognized across by the business partners as well, business entities. So those three areas for me are giving that kind of a hope that really indeed zero waste is where we're going to. Thank you.
Thank you. That's the future. Zeynep, what do you say?
Well, since I have started this journey with zero waste within the UN, what was the most inspiring thing for me? I guess it was the community and local level youth initiatives regarding zero waste. Those are young people that are that have the knowledge that we don't have, perhaps as the previous generation, and they are ambitious. They have the know-how and they have goodwill. So perhaps sometimes we need to follow young leaders instead of years-old verbal commitments, which hasn't turned into implementation, because this reminds me that no one has the monopoly on good ideas. So
Brilliant.
Go ahead.
Brilliant.
Let's keep working.
I was doing that fist in the air, but I think my virtual background didn't make it as great as I wanted it to be, because there are a lot of young people in the room and they love hearing it. You can see their hats flying around. All right, let's go to Josh.
Thanks. In my 7 years of doing this, I started off with 0 volunteers. No restaurants would talk to me. Now we have so many restaurants. We have over 24 volunteers at the farm. I attended the largest compost convention last year. There were so many people. It's so easy to get inundated with negative headlines. Change is happening. Be positive. We are the seed planters, and we're going to have a beautiful oak tree one day. So keep going. Don't give up.
Perfect. Thank you. So wise. Nicholas.
Yeah, joining my colleagues here, I think the increased visibility that the climate crisis has through the methane lens, and also the opportunities that are opening in the waste sector through a zero waste model, I think they are increasingly salient. I think there's a lot of interest globally in tackling down both crises. And yeah, I think that's demonstrated that the last year during COP, we had the first ever waste pavilion. And it was surprising that after 25 COPs almost, we didn't have that. And yeah, but that's ongoing. And I think that's changing a lot the landscape. We had global leaders going to the floor and speaking about the challenge of the waste sector. So I think we need to take that opportunity and just continue to work on that. And
brilliant. That was a big moment to celebrate having the methane house. So that was great. Neil, finally, what is your hope? What is that indicator?
Well, I'd say two things. One is zero waste is really a win-win solution, right? It's a win for everyone on so many different levels, as we've been talking about. And that makes it, I think when we're in a hard space as a human race, it's a great solution for us. The other is, I remember 25 years ago when we started talking about zero waste and people scoffed. It was thought to be hopelessly idealistic, that this was just not a realistic thing. And now here we are. You've just heard from everybody about the pavilion at COP and the UN Zero Waste Day, and cities around the world taking it up, and really hundreds of implementers in different cities pushing from civil society or from within the city. So I see that zero waste is definitely the wave of the future.
Thank you so much, Neil, and thanks to everyone who joined. Thanks to our panelists, thanks to GAIA and the organizers, everyone who contributed to this. Zero waste is not only possible, it is already happening worldwide. And let's remember to always talk about it in this narrative, because this is zero waste. It is us driving this action, leveraging this momentum, and growing it to scale. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure being a moderator for this event and really joining this. Have a wonderful rest of the day, and remember to go zero waste. Thank you.